Namaskar, hello, and welcome to Vision Economics Academy. This is my humble effort to do one short revision of chapter number 2, Sectors of Indian Economy, Class 10 Economics, CBSE Board. Right? Without further ado, I'll start right away. So you can see here there are various activities that has been shown here. These are all the economic activities. As you can see here, a person is selling some things, some goods to a woman. Here, a porter is carrying a luggage. Here, bricks is being manufactured. Here, a woman is selling clothes in a retail market. Here, there is agriculture or the growth of or production of cotton, right, which represents agriculture. Now, as you can see here, these are various economic activities, but it has been divided according to the nature of its work. Like for example, a person is selling something here. That means basically this is a service sector, right? Selling finished products. Here they are converting the raw materials into finished product, that is bricks, right? So this is manufacturing sector. Then we have their porter providing his services, that is service sector again. Then we have here service sector, and this is agriculture sector, right? Agriculture sector. Okay. So according to the nature of its, we divide the sector into various, we divide the economic activities into various sectors. Let's see. First, before that, the overview of the chapter. So the chapter, through by studying this chapter, we'll understand various economic sectors. Okay, we can classify economic sectors and how these sectors contribute to the overall economy. Then how we or differentiate different sectors. Then we see economic development and employment in each of the sectors. We see the shift of employment from one sector to the other, shift of the contribution of sectors from one to the other, okay, their contribution to the GDP and their interdependence also. They are interdependent on each other. So we look at the interdependence of them as well. Now, classification according to the sectors, as I've already said, according to the nature of the activity, we classify the economic activity into various sectors. For example, first, primary sector. Um, it involves any activities that uses natural resources. Okay. So it involves any activities that would use natural resources. For example, there is cotton cultivation, depends on natural factors like rainfall, climate. Cotton is a natural product. In the same way, dairy farming depends on biological process, giving fodder to the availability of the fodder, that is the food that is partaken by uh, the domesticated animals or the livestock. Milk is a natural product, obviously. It, so this is also this also comes under the primary sector. The mineral extractions, so minerals and ores are also natural product. So their extraction would also be called, primary sector. Now, what are the roles of it? Is that its role is the best. So it is the primary sector. By name itself, it suggests that it's a primary sector, right? It acts as a base for all the other products. For example, the mud that we have from the land that we get it from natural and from the nature, we convert it into bricks. The iron ore, we convert it into iron, right? So etc. So the primary sector acts as a base. So production of the primary sector, like for example, the production of vegetables, through agriculture is also used by the people in the service sector, because the product of agriculture sector is only is because of the production of the agriculture sector that the people in service sector can perform their job, because they get to eat, right? Which is very essential for uh, sustenance. So agriculture sector acts as a base for all the other products. Then comes manufacturing sector or the secondary sector. It involves transforming the natural products into finished goods. For example, we have seen in the picture itself, the mud that we have derived naturally, through the nature, is transformed into bricks, iron ore transformed into iron, right? Um, Example here is cotton processing. Whatever cotton fiber uh, we derive from primary sector, it is, converted into cloth, right, through various processes. Sugar production is again primary sector, but converting sugarcane into sugar or good is again manufacturing sector. Like for example, using earth to make bricks in construction of the buildings, again manufacturing sector. Okay, so it represents the industrial sector where natural resources are processed into finished products. Okay, it's also known as industrial products due to various types of industry that it focus on. Okay, so it is not produced by nature, but it has to be made, right? So therefore, some process of manufacturing is essential. That's why it's also called manufacturing or secondary sector. Now, tertiary sector is it involves any activities that provide support and services to primary and secondary sector. Now, see, basically there are three sectors. First is primary, then secondary, then service sector or tertiary sector. Okay, so primary acts as a base. It's all the product of nature, right? And secondary sector or the manufacturing sector converts the the product that is derived from the nature, the raw materials, into a finished good. And tertiary provides a support for both of these. The finished product of secondary sector or the manufacturing sector is again transported through service sector, is sold through service sector, right? Um, the various credit and financial requirements that is needed for primary and secondary sector is also provided by the service sector through banks, etc. And so tertiary sector provides support for the growth of the secondary and primary sector. But however, all these are interdependent. All these sectors are interdependent, right? Moving goods by trucks and trains, keeping goods in godowns, communication, postal services, banking, trade that is selling goods in wholesale or retail shops. All these are the example of service sector. So it may not directly help in production of a good, but it provides essential services like teaching, healthcare, personal service, modern ID-based services, internet cafes, ATMs, software companies, etc. So these all are the categories of tertiary sector. Now we are comparing the three sectors. Okay, each sector produces large variety of goods and services that we all know, but the performance of each sector is different. Different sector has different roles. It has varying number of people to produce these goods and services. Different kind of people, different number of people are involved in this. Some sector are more dominant than the other in terms of total production. Some sector are more dominant in terms of employment. Okay. Now we have something called measuring production. How do we measure production? It's a very challenging task. Counting all the goods and services directly is impractical. It's not practical to count all the goods and services that has been produced. So what we do is we rather calculate We rather calculate the value of goods and services instead of their quantity. We calculate the value of goods and services in rather than their quantity. So example, if 1000 kgs of wheat is sold at rupees 8 per kg, then the total value of goods and services produced will be 80,000. So this is how we calculate the production. Now, one thing that we need to remember here is that we only take final product into consideration, not the intermediate goods. So only final goods and services are counted to avoid the double counting. Okay. So what is double counting? See, there is something called double counting here, and only final goods and services are counted, not the intermediate goods. If we count the intermediate goods, then there'll be the problem of double counting. For example, we calculate the final price of wheat flour. Okay. But if we calculate all the intermediate goods, like for example, wheat, the labor, the the energy that's required to run the machines, the transport, etc., then there'll be problem of double counting. For example, if there is a car also, if the car, if in a car we use tires, right? If in a car we use tires, we use glasses, we use aluminiums, etc., etc. Okay, so if we separately count all the value of this intermediate goods, then it will not show us the true value of the good. So it's always better we calculate the final value of the goods and services, not the intermediary cost. Okay, we only calculate the final value. Otherwise, there will be problem of double counting. We'll be counting that again and again, and the value that we get will be misinforming us, right? So calculation of GDP. So total value of all final goods and services produced in a country is called gross domestic product. So in a year, how much ever the total value of goods and services is produced, that's called GDP. Now, what is the purpose of measuring GDP? GDP measures the size of an economy. GDP is used to measure the size of the economy. We also use to compare various sectors. We also use to compare our country with various other economies. So GDP measurement is conducted by the central government. It involves collecting the data on goods, services, prices from various states, union territories to estimate GDP. So various data are collected from each and every stages, and then finally from each towns to states to union territories, and then finally we calculate the GDP. And it's a task of the central government to conduct this, right? So measuring productivity, if you want to see what measuring productivity is, it's very difficult to calculate the value of goods and services of it's very difficult to calculate the amount of goods that has been produced, because large amount of production is going on, large amount of people are involved in it. So it's better we calculate the final value of goods and services. To avoid the double counting, we have to calculate the final value of goods and services. Then we also learned as to what GDP is, the total value of goods and services produced within a country in a year. Then what is the purpose of GDP and how is GDP measured, right? That we all have discussed. So there is a table given over here which shows the interdependence between the sectors, between the three sectors, right? So what would happen to cotton cultivation if companies decide not to buy from Indian markets and import all cotton they need from other countries? So Indian cotton cultivation would be less profitable, and the farmers may even go bankrupt if they cannot quickly switch to the other crops. Cotton prices will fall. So that means if the Indian market decides to import all the cotton raw materials from outside, then what would happen is our agriculture, our farmers, our cotton growers will suffer because there will be a huge fall in the price, right? Indian cotton, as they are exporting from foreign countries to get the raw materials, it will not be profitable. So this basically shows the dependence of agriculture sector into manufacturing sector, right? And dependence of manufacturing sector into agriculture sector. Now, farmers buy many goods such as tractors, pump sets, electricity, pesticides, and fertilizers. Imagine what would happen if the price of the fertilizers or pump set go up. Again, now cost of cultivation of the farmers would rise and the profit will be reduced. Now, again, this is an epic example of the interdependence of manufacturing sector, the service sector who is selling all these products, and the agriculture sector. If the price of all these goods increased, then obviously it would affect the agriculture. So people working in industrial and service sector need food. So imagine what would happen if there is a strike by transportation or lorries, if they refuse to take vegetables, etc. So what happens if the transportation workers, right, the drivers, they decide to be on a strike? Then it would affect both the agriculture sector and manufacturing sector, as it is dependent on service sector. So, and the vegetables would get rotten, it will get decayed, and the people in the service sector would not get food to eat. So all these three sectors are interdependent, right? So even though we study it separately for simplicity's sake, right? But in different categories, but we know that how these sectors are very much interdependent. Okay, they are interdependent. Now, historical changes that has happened throughout. So, initial stages of development, there was first the primary sector dominance, right? Everywhere in the world, it was the primary sector that firstly came out as an economic activity. It was the most important one, like farming, craft making, trading. Transportation then came up slowly. So it was the first, the primary sector. People started growing food. They started doing activity, economic activity on it. They started exchanging goods for goods. Then there was activities like craft making, farming, trading that also came up. Transportation, administration, military roles. As people started becoming civilized society, they started living in society. We stopped being nomads. We started growing food rather than us going in search of food. We started growing foods, and different kinds of activities started coming up. Then most people then worked in agriculture and related activities. Okay, that we all know. So what has been the evolution over time? Over time, agriculture, the techniques of agriculture has improved, the farming methods has improved and led to surplus food production. As there is surplus food production, we have ample amount of time to depend or to, you know, do other activities as well. So as the food production became surplus, people started becoming, involving more as a craftsmen, traders, transporters as well, right? Then we shifted to the secondary sector. There was new manufacturing methods and factories expansion. We saw industrial revolution all over the world. Yes, not all over the world, but in the developed parts of the world, especially in the Western society. Then there was shift of employment from farm workers. They transitioned into factory jobs in search of better working condition, or in search of better opportunity. I cannot say working condition, but in search of better opportunity and regular income, people started shifting from former farm working to the factory. So factory produced goods more cheaply, making it secondary sector dominant. Then there was the dominance of secondary sector because the factories were producing goods at a cheaper rate because there was mass production and because of the increase in technology. Now, in recent times, what has happened is the tertiary sector has grown. Over the past 100 years, there has been a shift from secondary sector to tertiary sector, right? In developed countries, service sector is now the dominant in both production and employment. So that's how there has been a historical changes from the time agriculture sector, which was the primary sector and the first activity, economic activity that started after people started living in a society. And then we transitioned into a manufacturing sector where manufacturing grew, factories came up, there was industrial revolution in most of the Western world. And now in the last 100 years, there have been services in various forms. There has been doctors, teachers, there have been transportations, there have been import, export. There has been increase in the market, increase in the financial services, etc. So there has been a huge change and transition from primary to secondary and from secondary to service sector in recent years. So if we are to see the current situation uh, of India, right? Now, from 1973 to 1974 onwards is the GDP contribution by primary, secondary, and tertiary sector. First, if you see in 73, 74, you can see that agriculture and service sector are contributing more than the manufacturing sector, right? And agriculture and service sector is contributing uh, about the same. Now you can see in the 40 years time period how it has transitioned. Agriculture has become the lowest contributor. The manufacturing is the second highest. Again, manufacturing has its highs and lows, and its growth is pretty complex, and it has not been able to grow properly. And there is a huge growth in the service sector. So over the years, over the 40 years, service sector has grown hugely. Then the manufacturing and the agriculture sector. So agriculture sector is the lowest performer in terms of its contribution to GDP, which used to contribute as much as other sectors before. Now it's the lowest. Now there's a rising importance of tertiary sector. Now there has been rising importance of the tertiary sector in production. Okay, so over the 40 years, that is between 1973-74 to 2013-14, while the production of all the three sectors in terms of production all have risen, all the three sectors have risen in terms of absolute production, but in terms of the contribution of it, the contribution of the service sector has risen the most. So why is tertiary sector becoming so important in India? So basic service requirement, because as there is more number of activities coming up, essential services like hospitals, schools, postal services, police, administration, courts, right, etc. coming up. There are more requirement of services. The government is responsible for providing basic services in a developing country. So growth in agriculture and industry drives the demand of services. So it's interlinked, right? The growth in agriculture and industry would also put an impetus on the growth of service sector. Increased development in primary and secondary sector boost service sector's growth as well. So higher income leads to increased demand for services such as dining out, tourism, private education, profession training. So as the income is rising, as the people's income is basically rising, we can see that it's very evident that the people income is rising day by day. and it would lead to more people eating outside, more people living life in luxury, people opting for private education, professional training. So it has also given rise to services. New services that has been coming up recently is the information and communication technology, which we cannot imagine our life without it. And in today's day and age, so the production of information and communication technology is expanding rapidly, and that is also contributing towards the growth of service sector. Now, there is diverse form of employment in service sector. Unlike agriculture, there isn't much diversity. You either grow, or you are involved in small craftsmen, say, ship, artisans. There aren't much small scale industries in the semi-rural, semi-urban and rural areas. But in service sector, there is vast diversity in terms of employment. So there is highly skilled jobs, limited number of high skilled and educated positions in service sector. The thing is that in service sector we need skilled jobs, and but the provision of jobs are very limited because we need highly educated or highly skilled people. So even though the service sector is growing much, it has not been able to give or create as much employment as the other sector, right? So that's the reason why it is so. It is so because of the requirement of the high skilled and educated positions in the service sector. So large number of low income workers are also there in service sector, that is who are involved in working in small shops, repairs, transportations, who works in as a plumber, who are not regularly employed, right? Construction workers. So there is income disparity. Only part of the service sector is experiencing significant growth. Many workers in lower end service sector still suffers and earns low. So what we can know from here is that there is diversity of employment, and even in service sector, if it has grown the most, it has not been able to employ people as it needs, as good jobs need high skills and high education, but there are many jobs in service sector that is providing very less amount of income, and people are still struggling there. Graph 2 shows share of sectors in GDP. See, way back in 73-74, almost agriculture was contributing as much as the service sector, and manufacturing was less. Over the years, service sector has grown a lot, but agriculture sector has reduced. Okay, its production, its share in the GDP has reduced a lot. But we do not see the same thing in terms of employment, share of employment. See, 73, 77, 78, in the year 77, 78, 71% of the people were involved in agriculture and they are employed in agriculture. Still now there are 44%, I would say. About half of the people of India are still engaged in primary sector or agriculture. Then the employment generation in manufacturing sector has grown a bit, and same thing with the service sector as well, but it has not been able to transform its growth in terms of employment. So in terms of employment, still the agriculture sector is the one which is employing more. So agriculture sector contributes about 12 to 13% of the GDP, and just see 44% or even more than that, about 50% of the people are dependent on the agricultural earnings. So there is bound to be disparity, there is bound to be poverty in the agriculture sector. Where are the most people employed? That's obviously primary sector. Employs over half of the workforce, contributes only about 1/6 of GDP. So it contributes only 1/6 of GDP. That means I've already told it contributes about 12 to 13% of GDP, but it's employing about 50% of the workforce. So there is a huge disparity and the gap. Secondary and tertiary sector are the ones who produce the most, okay, and employ another half of the workforce. So why didn't a similar shift out of primary sector happen in case of employment? See, there has been a shift in the production from primary sector into manufacturing and service sector, but we did not see the same kind of shift in terms of employment. That is because not enough jobs were created in the secondary and tertiary sector, and most of the jobs in the service sector requires high education and skill. So there is a limited shift in the employment from primary sector. The thing is that the secondary sector and the tertiary sector has not been able to absorb the employment, not been able to create opportunities for people to work. Sectoral shift in production and employment. See, industrial sector, if we talk about industrial sector, production has increased over 9 times. So in industrial sector, production has increased over 9 times, but its employment has grown only about 3 times. Now here also we can see how this sector has not been able to create employment. Though it has grown 9 times, the employment generation is only increased by 3 times. Now in service sector, it's more. 14 times it has grown over the last 40 years, but employment it has only been able to increase 5 times. So see the disparity. So that's the reason why agriculture sector still um, has half of the workforce working on it, leading to a lot of disguised unemployment. Primary sector continues to be the largest employer, employs over half of the workforce, contributes only about 1/6 of the GDP. So does this mean that people in the agriculture, see, half of the people are involved in agriculture. So does this mean that the workers in agriculture are not producing as much as they could? No. There are more people in agriculture than it is necessary. So there is an acute case of underemployment or disguised unemployment, right? So this does not mean that our people in the private sector are um, unproductive. We are unproductive. They are productive. However, as half of the workforce are dependent on the agriculture, there has been a lot of workers who are unnecessary, who are not necessary, who are still working. So that leads to, you know, a lot of disguised unemployment. So we have taken the case of Lakshmi in underemployment case in agriculture. So how there are underemployment in agriculture? So there are small farmer. No, Lakshmi is just an example to represent the whole of the farming community or the agriculture community in India. Small farmers, she is a small farmer with only 2 hectares of unirrigated land. She has 5 family members who work year around with divided labor. So there are 5 members in the family. They work throughout the year, but it illustrates underemployment because in the 2 hectares of land, even if the 3 out of 5 people stop working, nothing would get affected. So each one is doing some work, but no one is doing full potential. Nobody is fully employed. Each of them are doing their work, but all of them are not fully employed. That means there is a massive case of underemployment. There is no need of 5 people working on it. And this kind of underemployment is more dangerous because it's hidden. In paper, we can see that yes, there is employment, but in terms of contribution and in terms of productivity, nothing is being happened. So it's also called disguised unemployment. Okay. Now, suppose there is a change in the life of Lakshmi. Now, suppose there's a landlord called Sukram who comes and has one or two of the members of the family of Lakshmi. Then what happens? Their production, Lakshmi's 2 hectares land's production will not get affected. Rather, the two others, one or two others who have joined Sukram in his land to offer their services will get income. And the there'll be some extra income that has been earned by the family. So basically, the two family members leaving the work to work elsewhere uh, change the productivity nothing. Okay, the productivity remains unchanged, right? Um, so the income, family income will increase if fewer people are working at the farm. So potential for increased overall family income will come through diversification. That means all of them not working on one thing rather than diversifying their employment. So many farmers face similar underemployment. This is just a case study of Lakshmi, but she represents millions of farmers in the private sector. Underemployment in other sectors, even in other sectors, we find the case of underemployment. Casual workers in urban areas, the construction workers, the painters, plumbers, odd jobs workers, rickshaw pullers, etc. They are all the underemployed people in the urban sector because they are also not working to their full potential. So there is a lot of hidden underemployment, and even people migrate from the rural areas to urban areas in search of better opportunities, but again, they'll end up doing these menial jobs, these odd jobs, and you know, and pushing themselves further into poverty and the development of slums in the urban areas. All sort of problems takes place. In spite of them migrating to different places, they still continue to earn a little and have less of the opportunity, and they are not able to work to their full potential. So, what are the strategies that we can imply to create employment? So, to enhance agriculture productivity, we can go for agriculture irrigation infrastructure. So, if irrigation is done well, if people stops depending only on nature and climate and rainfall, and then there'll be growth in agriculture. Construction wells for irrigation in Lakshmi's farm can lead to additional employment in the farm. They can grow more land, more people, they can be involved, right? For work more than they used to, rather than working only in one season, Kharif season, they can also work in the Rabi season, right? Investment in infrastructures, if the government invests in building dams, canals, it increases the employment in agriculture because they'll get employment for at least 3 to 5 years. Improving the transportation and storage, improving the road, improving the transportation facilities would also improve the farmers' access to the market, right? And it would also create jobs in transport and trade. People can get diversified. People can diversify their work from the agriculture sector. They can also work as a transportation, so truck drivers, as a transporters. So all these things can happen. The improvement has to be made in terms of the storage, also in terms of infrastructure as a whole. The roads should be properly maintained so that four-wheelers can run on those roads and not much time is wasted because a lot of food can get decayed or perished, and the good roads and better transport facilities helps in reducing the time, and it increases the market access. We can promote the local industries uh, rather than depending on in agriculture. Those areas who are good in um, dal production can set up dal mills, you know, in the semi-urban areas where the farmers can go and sell their dal, get a good value for their product. Setting up cold storage, honey collection centers, all these things are the way we diversify and promote the local industries, which would also lead people to be employed and people to increase their income. Processing vegetables and agriculture products can also be done in semi-rural areas. It creates more employment locally. So expanding education and health sector, as we know, the NITI Aayog found out that there can be more than, sorry, they can create approximately 20 lakh jobs only in education. So more of education institutions and health institutions has to come up. So there's requirements of more nurses, more doctors, more health workers as well. So government needs to look at it and create the job that is required in order to serve it would serve the economy certainly. So tourism is also one of the important aspects that can be developed. Craft industries, yes. So the tourism sector can itself create over 35 lakh jobs annually. So it has to be focused things, keep the places has to be kept clean. The environment needs to take care of. Government needs to be strict. Support of new services. So there has been huge investment in emerging services like IT services. And there has been short-term measures also like Mahatma Gandhi National Rural Employment Guarantee Act. That is in 2005. It was introduced in 2005, which is a short run or a short-term measures. How does it work? It guarantees 100 days of employment to the people, in rural areas per year, so that at least they get employed for 100 days and they earn something. It provides unemployment allowances if the government fails to provide work. It focuses on increasing land productivity through designated work types. So they would pull in the rural workers who are unemployed and make them do some work, and by paying them, obviously. So 100 days of guaranteed labor is done. So which would also increase the productivity in those areas and also create employment, right? So Mahatma Gandhi National Rural Employment Guarantee Act is one of the short-term measures that has been taken to increase the employment. Now, the final segment of the chapter, that is division of sector into organized and unorganized. Here we have Kanta and Kamal's story. Um, you know, um, Kanta works in a office from 9:30 to 5:30. Right? She gets a holiday on Sundays, paid holiday, and she has appointment later. There's a planned holiday. There's a medical allowances that she gets. She has a fixed amount of working hours, right? And there are terms and conditions of the work, stated in the appointment letter. But Kamal is working who is Akanta's neighbor, but he works in a shop, grocery shop nearby, and he does not get any paid leaves. He has to work from 8 o'clock in the morning, sorry, 7:30 in the morning till 8 o'clock, more than 12 hours. He has no fixed timing of working. He has no leaves or paid holidays, and he has not been given any formal letter. He can be thrown out of the job anytime, right? He can be fired. So what is the difference between organized and unorganized sector? Organized sector, it is the enterprises which offer regular employment, you know, government registration is there. It has to adhere the law of the government. It has to adhere the labor laws. Factories, shops, large firms, schools, colleges, all these are organized sector. Assured work, regular hours of work, and if you work overtime, you will be paid more. In unorganized sector, you will probably not get that. You have paid leaves, holidays, provident fund, gratuity, pensions, that all benefits you'll get. Then safe working conditions and the medical benefits are also received. But unorganized sector, small scattered units, often outside government control. Nobody knows who is controlling it. Nobody knows how much it's following, adhering the government laws. Okay. Then street vendors ho gaya, small farmers, casual workers, all these are example of unorganized workers. So street vendors, no government laws supporting them, small farmers, casual workers, construction workers, etc., housemaids, low and irregular pay, no guaranteed benefit, or job security. There's no job security. Employment often at employer's judgment. Law adherence to regulations. There is no following of rules and regulations. And what are the challenges that is there in the organized sector? That is, stability is not there, no fixed employment terms, no provisions for paid leaves, sick leaves, and overtime. Economic impact is that low wage and irregular incomes are there in unorganized sector. Yes. And the legal issue is that it has poor enforcement of existing laws. There is a law, there's a labor law. Okay, all these law are to be followed strictly, but it's highly unstable. They do not follow or adhere to the law, and there are a lot of other problems as well that we face or as a challenge in the unorganized sector. So, who are the vulnerable groups? Vulnerable means who are more prone to, who are the weaker class, who will be the first one to get affected. So, in rural areas, the landless laborers, small farmers, artisans who are belonging to the vulnerable groups, they need seed delivery, they need credit, they need storage, they need marketing, they also need some financial literacy, which we do not see. So, in rural areas, landless laborers, small farmers, artisans, all these are the vulnerable groups. In urban sectors, small scale industry workers, casual workers, street vendors are the vulnerable groups. They need raw materials, they need market access and job security. And in almost all the cases, the scheduled castes and tribes are the ones who face additional social discrimination and economic challenges. What is social and what is social? Social means all we live in a society, how we are treated in a society, what all is going on in the society, what is the education level, right? How each person is treated, right? What are the opportunities, how people are treated with equality or equity or not. All these things are social. Okay, so there has been social discrimination, and as there is social discrimination, it will lead to economic challenges as well. As they're socially discriminated, they are not being able to be in the mainline, mainstream work. So they may not be economically sound as well. They may not get good education. So they will always keep on falling in this vicious, they will keep on round and round in this vicious cycle of poverty. So there's a need for support, and all this protection and support are crucial and are very much required, right? In organized sector, in unorganized sector. So goal of us is to enhance job security, enforce legal protections, and improve the working conditions of those people involved in unorganized sector. The last segment is the sector by ownership, that is public sector, that is owned by government. And examples are railways, post office. Purpose is to provide services without solely focusing on profit. So it's basically the government and does all this work, which are all the essentials and the basic work. And of course, private do provide it, even though it's not um, for any profit sector. It is done purely on the basis of services. Private sector is again owned by private individuals or businesses or companies. Example, Tata Iron and Steel Company, Reliance Industries Limited, etc. So their whole purpose is profit driven. Okay. So government also can support the private sector to encourage their production, because private sector, their sole motive is profit. They're not here to do the charity, or they're not here to do the services. Okay. They are here to provide the services, but obviously at cost. So, government needs to support these kind of new entrepreneurs, new innovators, and, support through affordable electricity, and to produce to prevent high cost of the industries, right? So one thing that can be done is we can reduce the electricity. Sorry, one thing that can be done is we can prevent high cost for the industries by supplying regular um, electricity. Government buying wheat and rice at a fair price and selling at a lower price to the people through ration cards, ration shops. All these are example of how government can support the private sector and encourage them to production. Because if there is no profit, they will not be encouraged. So if there is a support from the government, and they'll get encouraged, and profit provide private sector can work efficiently. We can provide good health and education, address high literacy and illiteracy and malnutrition rates. Human development, it ensures access to safe drinking water, housing, and nutrition. So focus on poor and neglected regions as well. So what are the government's responsibility now is to provide quality education and healthcare, address the high amount of electricity that we have, high malnutrition we have. Should ensure from the human development point of view, um, clean drinking water, nutrition, focus on poor and neglected people. Um, what is by saying that what why public sector is necessary? Public sector is necessary because it is essential for providing services that the private sector may not be able to, like supply of electricity, supply of water, law and order. So public sector is necessary as it ensures equitable access to resources, because as they are service or welfare oriented, they are not fully profit driven. They will be, and the public sector will be able to give equitable access to resources and support people for vulnerable groups as well. So that's very important. Public sector is very necessary in a especially country like us. Thank you. This much was from the chapter 2. I hope I have been clear. So we'll meet you again when I do one short revision of the third chapter. Till then, stay tuned. Please like, share, subscribe, and support